Many things are happening at the same time in this painting. Don't you think this place looks too crowded? What do these things mean? It looks like a huge riot, but a riot kind of fun. I mean, there are some things that are funny, like this guy stretched out on top of his board in the lower right corner. Huh? What's he trying to do? Surfing? What if I told you that behind all these funny actions, there is some buried wisdom? Are you ready to find out? The truth is that this very elaborate and detailed work at first appears to be a simple scene from a village with a large cast of characters. However, it is soon revealed to be something more. Each of the various scenes depicted in this painting talks about a different proverb. Some are ironic, some are silly and funny, that test the brain and intelligence. It is like a play with language in literature, which carries over into art. This painting has an amazing amount of fun elements that make you try to guess what the proverbs being shown are. For example, don't build your roof with coins. What does it mean? Oh, that the most expensive thing is not always the best thing.
Why?
But wait a moment, these are not coins on the roof, they're tarts. And to have a roof tiled with tarts means you have plenty of prosperity. What a genius! Looking for these proverbs along this board is like playing a game. Hey, this is reminding me of something. It's almost like Where's Wally, but make it Renaissance. Hey, since you're already here, how about leaving your like on the video? Also, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications to stay tuned for the next videos. Good idea, huh? Moving on. Netherlandish Proverbs, painted in 1559 by the Flemish artist Pieter Bruegel the Elder. In this painting, the artist included literal and exaggerated illustrations of more than 100 proverbs in Dutch. But who is Pieter Bruegel the Elder? Bruegel was a Dutch Renaissance painter and printmaker, famous for painting landscapes and peasant scenes. He gained experience in this style during his time in Italy and France, before going to Antwerp, where he became a master in the Painters Guild.
I'm done.
The greatest influence on Bruegel's art comes from the Old Dutch master Hieronymus Bosch. However, his greatest inspiration came directly from nature, which is evident in some of his works such as Landscape with the Fall of Icarus, 1558, or Winter Landscape with a Bird Trap, 1565. Although at that time the Italian style dominated paintings, Elder preferred to paint in a somewhat simpler manner. He was the pioneer of Dutch genre painting because his main focus was on the village lifestyle, as seen, for example, here in Netherlandish Proverbs. Religion was also the subject of other paintings of his, such as the Tower of Babel, 1563. Bruegel was the most significant Dutch and Flemish painter of the Renaissance. He significantly influenced Dutch painting of the Golden Age, as he addressed innovative subjects in his works. He was part of the first generation of artists who grew up when religious subjects ceased to be the dominant theme in paintings.
You think you're God, bro? You're not God, bro. You can't ask me that. Sorry.
His most famous paintings come from the decade before his early death, when the artist was in the early 40s of the 16th century and at the peak of his artistic abilities. His family is made up of other artists, so he dropped the H from his name and signed his paintings as Bruegel. He was sometimes called Peasant Bruegel, to distinguish him from his relatives, including his son, Pieter Bruegel the Younger. But now, speaking of the proverbs, most of them are focused on the kinds of absurdities that human behavior can have, and Bruegel's interpretations reinforce this. This is the reason why he portrays a world literally turned upside down in Netherlandish Proverbs. Some of these proverbs, the most serious ones, illustrate the dangers when folly leads to sin. Actually, this painting was not always called Netherlandish Proverbs. It used to have a different title, the Topsy-Turvy, which seems to be connected with the upside-down globe in the right corner of the picture. This symbol, reinforced by the old title, seems to explicitly illustrate that this world presented by Bruegel is one where nothing is as it should be. The wise words of these proverbs are evidence of the madness and sinfulness of man in an equally mad and sinful world that is estranged from God.
Smite me, O mighty smiter. Now, I'm not much for blaspheming, but that last one made me laugh.
But what would these follies and sins be? Well, this concept fits well with a popular theme of the world turned upside down, shown through literature and art in the 16th and 17th century. This would include all kinds of crazy actions for that time, such as a horse pulling a cart, a small child taking care of a parent, or even a woman being in charge of something. I am even curious to know what Bruegel would think, seeing our current society. Would he be inspired to paint in Netherlandish Proverbs Part 2? Netherlandish Proverbs is evidence of Bruegel's intense interest in the spiritual and moral issues of his time. This may be the reason why this painting is a work of timeless validity. It is also consistent with the common themes in the artist's paintings, such as the absurdity, wickedness, and madness of humans. In this painting, he presents a catalog of human folly, where the people were portrayed to show the characteristics that Bruegel used to portray fools. In fact, proverbs were very popular in Bruegel's time. A century before Netherlandish Proverbs, illustrations of the proverbs had already been used first in the books of Ars. A book of Ars was a popular Christian devotional book in the Middle Ages. Netherlandish Proverbs was not only Bruegel's only painting on the subject of proverbs. In 1558, a year before this painting, Bruegel completed a series of 12 proverbs in individual panels, and also painted Big Fish Eat Little Fish in 1556. However, even compared to these, the Netherlandish Proverbs is considered the first large-scale representation of the genre. Approximately 110 proverbs and idioms have been identified in this painting. It is possible that Bruegel included more than this, but it's not certain. This is because some are not obvious and probably cannot be determined due to linguistic and cultural change over the nearly 500 years since this painting was completed. It is common for some proverbs and idioms to lose their usage, which makes it even more difficult to understand each of the stories present in this painting. Bruegel was living in tumultuous times. At this time, he was living in a country under Spanish Catholic rule, where the shadow of the Spanish Inquisition was looming. Bruegel's own religious views are not clear. He had humanist patrons and associates, but at the same time, he did not openly oppose either Catholicism or Protestantism. Thus, Netherlandish Proverbs can be understood as an exploration of religiosity, a landscape without God where moralistic proverbs allow the viewer to understand what is happening in this messy scene. Currently, Netherlandish Proverbs is on display in Gemäldegalerie Berlin. However, Bruegel's son Pieter Bruegel the Younger devoted himself to making copies of his father's work and painted at least 16 copies of this original painting. They can be found in other art museums around the world. The curious thing about these versions is that some show different proverbs, or even show the same ones, but with minor details that differentiate them in certain aspects. It is amazing how Bruegel's creativity and imagination managed to fit so much into one work of art. Now let's take a closer look at the painting. What are the proverbs it shows? Are there any interesting technical details? Let's see.
Okay, guys. Show us what you got.
Netherlandish Proverbs shows a scene in which human beings, and to a lesser extent, animals and objects, offer illustrated examples of Dutch proverbs and idioms. The proverbs are represented by real environments, and in real people's behaviors, concisely and appropriately by the so-called wise men. It is true that everything looks like a big mess, but this feeling comes from the individual scenes, which here are played outside by side, without being directly dependent on each other. A village near the sea is the spacious stage for the seemingly everyday activities of its inhabitants. Even the background is composed of varied elements, such as farmhouse, dilapidated huts, a stone bridge with a pillory, a tower, a village square at the center of it all, and a farm among cornfields close to the forest. In the distance is the open sea, glistening in the sunlight of a summer day. Look closely at the painting and you will see many unspeakably random actions, such as these two men trying to shear pigs, someone biting a pillar, and a roof filled with tarts. The painting seems to superficially feed erroneous stereotypes of the stupidity of those who live in the countryside.
Stop acting so stupid!
But this is only part of the trick of the painting. Evaluating the painting, as strange and messy as it may seem, there's a sense that something can be discovered. This is because the figures act in multiple ways, and even the colors used carry their meanings. Let me start with a very interesting example, where you need to understand the use of color to also understand the proverb that the scene portrays. Look at the woman dressed in red in the center of the painting. In 1559, when this painting was made, red was understood as a color of sin. At the same time, the blue cloak she is putting over the man in front of her, who is her husband, tells an interesting part of the story. Blue often meant betrayal or madness. So, it is possible to interpret that this woman is not simply handing over her husband's coat. She is cheating on him. As I said before, the painting shows many proverbs. However, I will show you some of the most interesting ones. Let's go. Here, you see a man holding a knife in his hand while resting his forehead against the brick wall. This is a representation of the proverb, banging your head against a brick wall, which means doing something repeatedly without being able to change the situation. Ouch, that must be painful. Next is this man running in desperation with his pants on fire. The proverb is move like your ass is on fire, which means to be in a hurry to do something. He indeed seems to be in a real hurry. In this one, you see two men sitting on stools and shearing animals. One of them shears sheep and the other pigs. Huh? This is the proverb, one shears sheep and the other shears pigs, which means that one person has all the advantages and the other one none. Really, what would be the advantage of shearing pig's hair? As for this one, very subtle, with 4 cards being played on a table. The proverb is clear and direct. It depends on how the cards fall. It means letting things happen without trying to change them. Inspiring. Another one, a hole with 2 faces stuck together, one with an almost optimistic expression and the other looking lost. It is the proverb, 2 fools under the same hood, that talks about being in a stupid but romantic company. Here, things are getting strange. See a guy leaning his body out of a window, his hand in a suggestive gesture. But about what? This is the proverb, pissing against the moon, which means doing something unproductive or inefficient. Okay, this one is really weird and almost graphic. 2 naked men stick their hind parts out of a window. Can you guess this one? It's they both shit out the same hole. The meaning is surprisingly touching, as it means to indicate that 2 or more people are good friends. In this one, 3 men stand by their shoulders as they walk in an open space. This is a representation of the proverb, if the blind lead the blind, they will both fall into the ditch. The meaning is predictable. A person with little or no knowledge should not lead someone more ignorant than themselves. And what about this man swimming in a strange way? It's a representation of the proverb, it is not good to swim against the current. It is when you go against something that is popular or against the most common perspective. This man with his hand over his head while taking something white with a spoon looks desperate. Everything has to do with this proverb. He who has scraped his porridge cannot scrape it all over again. It is when something is done and cannot be undone. In this one, you can see 2 dogs biting the same bone. The proverb for this image is 2 dogs and a bone rarely agree. That is, to argue pointlessly about a single point. What is wrong with this man? He looks desperate. Is he asking for help? Or is it something else? His proverb is, sit between 2 stools in the ashes. This one is for those who are indecisive. My god, what is that? By chance, this woman is trying to hang a demon? In the middle of a village? Right. Anyway, the proverb for this scene is to tie even the devil to a pillow. The meaning of a bizarre scene like this is quite motivating. Perseverance overcomes all. Go on, girl, don't give up. Whew, I could go on here for hours, and this video would be a short film to explain each of the proverbs. I better stop here. Either way, you get the idea that each proverb carries a lesson in a satirical and sometimes subtle way. The greatest truth of this painting is that this image is examining an entire society. But because it is in a rural setting, this allows the viewer to create a certain distance from what they see. But these behaviors, in fact, could be seen even in the big city, perhaps in other ways, of course. The society in this painting looks like anarchy, where everyone is on their own, which is nothing more than a reflection of the proverbs they represent. Here, Bruegel shows an individualistic society, where getting an advantage over others is more important than living well. No matter what or who, anything can be used to get to the top. Be it the scarlet-clad woman putting a blue cloak on her cuckolded husband, the pillar biter using religious hypocrisy to put others down, the innkeeper showing that he is able to fool others by hanging scissors outside, the two-faced woman carrying fire and water, or just that guy whose opinions change direction with the wind by hanging up his cloak to see which way it blows. In short, in this painting, the artist isolates its madness and exposes it for anyone to see. Even though it is an old painting, it is amazing how Netherlandish Proverbs is still relevant to this day. Technology has advanced, and our society too, but let's admit, human beings are still prone to the same idiocy they have always been. So, what did you think of the Netherlandish Proverbs? Did you find it entertaining? Could you identify other proverbs besides the ones I mentioned here? Well, I was a bit confused with so much going on at once. Hard to focus on just one, it all looks so interesting. I have one last proverb for you. Don't sit on hot coals. I'll be back soon with another spectacular work. See you there!